New York City, a name that instantly brings many images to mind, many of them not so positive. There are so many myths floating out there about the Big Apple, and today I'm gonna be debunking the most common ones. New Yorkers are rude. I think New Yorkers get a bad rap for lots of reasons, and being mean or being rude is near the top of the list. I just want to say, as far as hospitality is concerned, especially at restaurants, I find we have some of the best waiters, many of them making it a profession. And say what you want about tipping, but for customer service, I think New York is tough to beat at sit-down restaurants. Now, the people are a different story because they have that gruff exterior on the outside, especially in Manhattan, where everybody always seems like they're in a rush because, well, they are in a rush. And I didn't come up with this quote, but I agree with it. New Yorkers are kind, but not nice. Meaning they won't be fake nice with you, but they'll be real. And if you're in trouble, you'll be surprised how quickly New Yorkers will come to your aid. Just don't waste their time or expect a lot of small talk. One little quirk is if you're lost and a New Yorker overhears where you're going, they may shout out which way to go as they keep rushing on by. That literally happened to me a week ago when we were filming in the West Village, and I couldn't find this little side street. Some girl walked by and said, "1 block that way." She just kept on hurrying along. Very New York moment. Now, you've probably heard the term before, dirty water dog, but what that actually means is the water in the vat has been seasoned with spices, giving it that darkish appearance. I will be the first one to jump up and exclaim that it is safe to eat street food in New York. I have had more of it than most, and I've never gotten sick. There are exceptions. I've heard the stories, I've read the reports about some unsavory practices at some carts, as well as a proliferation of unlicensed food vendors. But keep this in mind, at least you can see them while they prepare your food. At a restaurant, you have no idea what's going on back there. You know what you really need to worry about as a tourist? Not how sanitary the food is, but getting ripped off at a food truck. Because if the vendor does not list his prices, I have heard so many stories from all of you about getting charged $50 for 2 hot dogs and 2 Cokes. So if the price is not listed, make sure to ask before you order. New York can be one of the most expensive trips of your life if you don't do your homework. I mean, if you blindly just book things during the Christmas period, you're gonna spend more money on your hotel in one night than probably your flight costs. And the 2 biggest expenses you'll run into are airfare and lodging here. After that, you can make it work with a moderate budget. But for airfare, the best thing I can tell you is to pick an off-season to visit. It's early March as we film this, and it's almost 60 degrees. I had to take my jacket off. Picking the shoulder seasons to visit is one of the best ways to save money on flights. The other being if you can get reward points through credit cards or frequent flyer miles. Also realizing that there's 3 area airports that you can fly into, Newark in New Jersey, LaGuardia, and JFK in Queens. And I say pick whichever one is the cheapest, because in the end, it really doesn't matter that much which airport you fly into. For hotels, the best tip I can give you is don't stay in Midtown Manhattan, or better yet, avoid Manhattan entirely. I have a good friend who's visiting soon with his kids. He's staying in South Brooklyn, saving a ton of money. He's gonna be walking distance to some of the best pizza in the US and under 30 minutes from Manhattan by subway. So if you are willing to stay just a little bit outside of the popular tourist areas, you are gonna save a fortune on hotels. As far as saving money on food and activities, well, I mean, you've come to the right place watching this channel. Hint, hint, we just did a video about the 50 best free things to do in New York, so definitely watch that if you want to save some money. And as far as food is concerned, we have covered so many budget, cheap eats, street food on the channel. Just look around. There's a lot of ways to save money eating out in New York. Now, going to sit-down restaurants, that is going to cost you. So what I would say is budget that in, but don't be afraid to grab some quick bites and cheap eats. This city is full of it. And while I'm not the biggest fan of them, if you absolutely must check off all the attractions of New York, getting one of the attraction passes will save you money. New York is just Manhattan. This myth really needs to die. And I'm not just talking figuratively. There are people that believe New York City only consists of Manhattan. When I moved out of Manhattan to Brooklyn almost 4 years ago, I can't tell you how many comments I got saying they were so sad I was leaving New York. And while people living in the tri-state area call Manhattan the city, it's just a figurative reference. New York City is actually 5 boroughs, and this came to pass in 1898 when New York County, which then included the Bronx, Kings County, Richmond County, and a part of Queens County were consolidated under a new city charter. Now, Manhattan does get most of the worldwide attention, which I understand. It is the icon. It's what you see in all the movies and TV shows. But you are just as much a New Yorker if you live in Forest Hills, Queens, or the South Bronx, or even Staten Island, as somebody who lives in Hell's Kitchen. And you may even hear the term outer boroughs, which refers to the 4 boroughs outside of Manhattan, but they are all still New York City. Central Park is New York's only green space. Now, I could understand how you'd come to that conclusion if you just stayed in a small bubble in Midtown. Heck, we're standing on a green space right now, the Elevated Acre, my favorite secret park in New York. And not only is Central Park not the only green space we have, but it barely cracks the top 5 in New York for size. Pelham Bay Park in the Bronx is actually number 1. So while Central Park is probably the world's most famous park, it is certainly not the only one we have in New York. There are so many for you to go explore. Broadway tickets are very expensive. Broadway tickets are expensive if you only want to see the hottest shows or the newest shows. But if you have some flexibility, you can get some pretty good deals. There's always deals to be had with rush tickets, buying at the TKTS booth, or the Today Tickets app, or even just monitoring the secondary market sometimes. There's also 2 for 1 week, or better yet, see an off-Broadway show where you're always gonna save money. Except for Little Shop of Horrors. That is extremely expensive because Darren Criss and Evan Rachel Wood are in it right now. So there's exceptions to that rule too. Celebrities are everywhere. I actually think you are more likely to see a celebrity in New York than you are in LA, because in LA, they're hiding in their cars, they're hiding behind large fences in front of their mansions. In New York, you'll see celebrities riding the subway. That being said, don't expect it unless you're stalking movie sites or going to a movie premiere. Heck, in my 13 years living in New York and all the years across the water in Jersey commuting in, I've seen celebrities twice. One time I saw Sean Penn walking near Port Authority, and a few years ago near my old apartment in the Village, I saw Jake Gyllenhaal walking on Houston Street. And that's many, many years here. So now you're all gonna tell me how you've seen celebrities in the comments and how it is common, but at least for me, and I think for most, don't expect it. The city never sleeps. Compared to most US cities, New York is the city that never sleeps. Well, it's the city that goes to bed later at least. Although I will say since COVID-19, a lot of that has changed. Many famous spots like Katz's Deli, Veselka, even many McDonald's do not stay open 24 hours anymore. So is New York really the city that never sleeps still? I would say no, but a lot of things are open late, and delis and bodegas, well, those are always gonna be 24/7. All New Yorkers are liberals. I like to stay away from politics on the channel, and this is the one time I'm gonna get into it without giving any of my personal views. New York does have an extremely liberal reputation worldwide, rightfully so. But just as an example, Lee Zeldin, a conservative Republican, won 30% of New York City's vote in his unsuccessful bid to win the New York State governorship less than 2 years ago, which was the highest amount for a Republican in 20 years. Almost 40% of Queens and 66% of Staten Island voted for Zeldin. So while the majority of New Yorkers are Democrats, not all New Yorkers are liberals. New York is all skyscrapers. Well, from where I'm standing right here, it might appear so, but if you've watched my channel for any length of time, you'll have seen us filming outside of Midtown Manhattan and Lower Manhattan, where the vast majority of skyscrapers actually are. Most people who live in New York aren't surrounded by skyscrapers on a daily basis. Sure, as a tourist, you'll be surrounded by them constantly, but according to Wikipedia, as of July of last year, New York has 316 completed skyscrapers that are at least 492 feet in height, more than any other city in the Western Hemisphere and third in the world behind Hong Kong and Shenzhen. So yes, New York has the most skyscrapers in North America, but there's plenty of locations where the only skyscrapers you'll see will be far away in the distance. The water is unsafe to drink. Now, I wouldn't recommend you go swimming in the East River or the Hudson River, but New York City's tap water, I think it's an unfair rap. New York gets its drinking water from 19 reservoirs and 3 controlled lakes spread across a nearly 2,000 square mile watershed. That watershed is located upstate in portions of the Hudson Valley and Catskill Mountains that are as far as 125 miles north of the city. In fact, the state is so confident in that water quality that the Department of Environmental Conservation has called it the champagne of drinking water. I don't think I would toast with New York City tap water during New Year's Eve, but it is quite safe to drink. This one really gets under my skin. New Yorkers only wear black. It's impossible to live in New York without a high-paying job. I would say it's impossible to live in New York in a trendy neighborhood without a high-paying job unless your parents or somebody else is paying your rent. So many newcomers arrive here and they have 3 roommates. Like, I lived with my twin brother to save money for 8 years in the Village. Or scary enough, they don't live below 14th Street or in Williamsburg and have to commute 30 minutes to get into Manhattan. Prices tend to go down a lot if you're willing to concede your own place or live outside of the popular areas. But it is still expensive versus other US cities. I will not deny that. New York is just a place you visit. To quote Fran Lebowitz, no one can afford to live in New York, yet 8 million people do. How do we do this? We don't know. If you really want to live here, you find a way. And you sacrifice space or location for all the amenities you get here until you find it too much of a hassle to continue doing so, because hundreds of people leave New York every single day fed up with living here. And for many, there's no other place in the world they would ever consider calling home, and we call them New Yorkers. Now that you know many of the biggest lies that people keep believing about New York, in this video, I'm gonna share 10 things I wish I knew before moving to the Big Apple. This is an eye-opening video. Watch this next.